Real quickly before we jump into it, Code Espresso is now on a flash sale of 30% off over at gfuel.com. So if you guys want to check it out, try a new flavor for the first time, restock, or just want to get the gist of it, Code Espresso gets you 30% off your entire order. So check it out. Weekend 1 is in the books for Modern Warfare's beta, and with it came a lot of feedback, a lot of opinions one way or the other, and overall, just a decent amount of time playing the game from the COD community. Admittedly, I have a lot more to say on the topic of the beta's first weekend than I imagined I would have, because I had a roller coaster of a time with it, but I think it's something to note that with this we'll go in depth and look at some issues, but I also wanted to give the credit where credit's due. Also, there's never going to be a right or wrong answer in some of what we discuss, but instead varying different opinions, and that's totally cool. I just wanted to share my thoughts on what I played, how I felt, and if you feel the same, great. If not, that's totally cool and I take no hard feelings. But anyways, let's jump into my thoughts. Let's start out with the positive. Firstly, I want to say that visually, I thought the game was absolutely stunning. I know there's plenty of people out there that will say graphics look like garbage or something like that, but to someone like me who doesn't care about exact resolution, texture integrity, poly count, and other things that go way in depth with a fine-tooth comb, and instead just prefers that smooth 60 FPS nature for console, yes, I know that 144 Hz and up is way better on PC. I use it on PC, but until Sony and Microsoft step up their game, or COD is primarily marketed towards PC, 60 FPS is that base, of course, for air quote smooth in COD. Outside of the real nitty-gritty, I think that it looks great. I was impressed with it running at 4K on my PS4 Pro, again, even though that for the techies out there, it might not be native or true 4K on PlayStation 4, it still looked remarkable compared to recent years, I thought. Additionally, I loved things like Gunsmith. I think that's just outright awesome. I love the air quote create class this year because you're able to see the physical changes to your weapons, you'll be able to see the amount of options you have no restrictions based upon individual items, and instead you can put 5 attachments default on your primary and secondary and still have a class built around that with perks, lethals, and tacticals and so on, and to be able to do all that with an unfathomable amount of possibilities for how you can build your weapon, to me that's also cool. I know that maybe not many people will go super into this or care too much after a few days, but I really did enjoy having my hands-on ability with most of the weapons that we saw beforehand, but now finally in a capacity where we could see how leveling and unlocks would work. I played around with about a half dozen or so weapons to max them out and get a feel of how everything would work out exactly, and it just felt good to do. It felt rewarding to put the time in and finally get that attachment loadout that you really wanted from the very beginning. I'm also happy with the way that the content itself was handled, or at least how it seems like it's working, if it works how I think it will afterwards. Seeing a handful of the maps the entire way through all the pre-beta events thus far, from when we had a behind closed doors press event in May, and then at the reveal event for Modern Warfare's MP, and then of course with Alpha, and then now the beta, it's looking pretty good to me. It doesn't spoil too much, assuming that there is much more coming map-wise. Weaponry-wise, I didn't seem to really mind seeing the weapons in the final build, and we do know there's a couple of more coming apparently, but having that inability to access them also made for a nice little tease where I still want more. I still want to come back next month and play and experience all those new weapons and what they offer as well. It keeps me intrigued for later, but also satisfies that thirst for something new in the present. I was a bit worried that there'd be a little bit too much or maybe a little too little shown off or accessible, but I actually think it was handled pretty well. I'm also still looking forward to the next level cap increase and the rest of the content to come in next weekend's weekend too, but also what lies after that. The minimap is also something I want to talk about that I think I like in the current build as well. It was a hot topic of discussion that truthfully, outside of just what we have right now, I was totally impartial to. I think that I enjoy COD better with a minimap just for that information consumption and being able to read the flows of the map right there on your HUD as opposed to squinting to see if that's your teammate's blue outline across the map and or if there's any around you to try and know maybe the spawns are flipping. But I also think that in time I'd be able to adjust whatever the situation gave me and make it work. But with the compromise that we got with the minimap we have right now where it showcases your team but not the enemy fire, I actually think it's a decent middle ground. It's a speedy compromise that was implemented rather quickly, even though to be honest, it was probably planned for a while, but you get the picture still. I think it was something that was nice to be implemented when it was, and my only issue right now with the minimap in particular is that I feel like the distances and general relativity isn't as accurately conveyed as other games with the minimap, meaning that if you have an enemy on that minimap, it may seem like they're further away, but they actually in reality could be right around that corner on top of you. So I'm hoping maybe that gets fixed out as a little bit of an issue, but other than that, I'm okay with where it is right now. I also love the attention to detail that went into the build that we have at the moment. The gun physics, the gunsmith with the attachment depth, the new settings you really otherwise wouldn't really consider, like the hit marker sounds being able to be changed to the classic sound or the new hit marker sounds, the new ADS sensitivity options for not only just rifles, but also the different settings for marksman rifles. It just allows for so much more of unique playstyles to flourish with how many options there really are. Other smaller things like the watches, the gun smokes, the real-time and incredibly accurate shadows of character animations with the global lighting. There's honestly so much that I can get into, and I dig it all. To round out the positives here, one of the biggest things though that I enjoyed didn't even come down to the gameplay itself, but instead is something from a perspective of community engagement. I give a huge hats off to Ashton, the senior communications manager at Infinity Ward, and the rest of the team who were eyes peeled on the Modern Warfare subreddit, Twitter, Twitch, and all locations where feedback was being given. The amount of interaction on those posts is something that was unrivaled, and I'm sure is a few things. 1, not easy to keep up with. 2, terribly tedious and requiring tons of patience to be able to sift through all the toxic and nonsensical comments like that are just painful to read from a humanistic standpoint, and to be able to find and derive the actual feedback amidst that sea of probably stupid interactions that just are personal insults with absolutely no merit. That deserves recognition. And 3, it's reassuring to see that our thoughts and concerns are being heard. I'm not necessarily saying to sacrifice the creative vision for the game, don't bend to every little thing, but to see that feedback recognized is nice. Sometimes that simple influx of data and seeing a repetitive nature of what should be fixed, that actually does sometimes point to issues that they didn't know were there. My hope is that this loop of communication continues even after the beta. Knowing some of the team personally, I have seen firsthand their interest in keeping that line of communication open, but sometimes those decisions are just genuinely out of the hands of those that can talk, where they just literally cannot at times. But my hopes is that we don't see a repeat of last year's beta with Black Ops 4, daily updates, tons of communication and such, and then radio silence for a very long time on issues that ultimately hurt the game. Additionally, and I know I said I wanted to round out the positives with that one, but just a quick little note, I do love the fact that the team is trying to push the boundaries of what we know and what we enjoy as a playable experience. With 32v32 Ground War coming up later next weekend for the beta on all platforms, I do think it's absolutely wild, firstly, that that's something we can even consider. From the days of the 6v6 and the humble origins to this, I think it's just nuts that that's something we can even consider. I know it might be too Battlefield for people, but to me, I think it's just even cool that's even being considered and is something that technically can work out. But that said, that is a lot of stuff that are just general statements about the game overall and not necessarily any particulars. Some of the upcoming pieces have just eaten away at me and the level of enjoyment that I had at its core within this first weekend of the beta. And admittedly, I hate saying it, but it's a completely different game than what myself and other press played back in May and August, and what we raved about and how much we enjoyed it. It's the first time that I've gone from I loved what I played to having plenty of things that do bother me, and for that I'm tremendously sorry for any inadvertent disingenuous appearances that may have caused. It's just truly such a different game when introduced into the mainstream and how the masses play the game compared to teams of press that want to go around and explore the map and not just sit in a doorway mounted looking downside at one spot the entire game. And also, we'll talk about it in just a second, but matchmaking itself might actually be something that plays into the effect of this. But right now, just the nature of the differences in playstyle, I guess, and some of these criticisms just ate away at me. But anyways, let's discuss a little further. I think one of the things that agitated me the most this weekend were the spawns. And yes, spawns are always bad, especially pre-launch. I mean, that's one of the biggest things they collect data on, and is one of the main reasons for the beta, so you don't pay $60 and have these issues on day one. So am I absolutely chastising the game or writing off the entire year for this? Absolutely not. But when it comes down to it, I think that spawns come down to two different pieces of error. One being that there's not enough spawn points, and two, the spawn logic itself just isn't up to where it should be. To elaborate, having more spawn locations may seem like a general statement for maps, but it's especially something that should be considered with 10v10, that unseen in the beta mode of 20v20 but has been previously shown off with Ania Palace, and the upcoming 32v32 mode. These need more spawn points. Raid in particular this past week was a big problem for me and almost entirely cut out the competition on the map or any meaningful engagements that could have happened. If you'd say try to capture or save B flag, for example, there's a very good chance you'd get killed by a player in that that overlook of either broken house or garage or some other engagement, and then immediately spawn all the way back at the back of C flag or A flag, depending on which side your team was on, or in that train yard or playground oppositely. All of those spawn points being so far out of the action that you'd more than likely lose that objective if there's any contention, with zero chance of saving it. Not to mention, that creates the factor of spawn, run 10 seconds to get back into the action, possibly get killed by a mounted player, repeat. It just takes out the entire pace and the flow of the game and creates uneven gameplay. Having more spawn points closer and dictated based off of enemy positioning, I think is key. I think that I spawned maybe mid-map a dozen times over the entire weekend, where I played a ton of matches on Raid, possibly even primarily on Raid. Everything else were those back spawn points, which, again, being so predictable, create a ton of spawn trapping. There was something that was rumored, or maybe even confirmed, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, that there would be a spawn function that would allow you to spawn on a squad mate, very similar to how Battlefield has it. And I think that especially with 10v10, 20v20, and 32v32, this is needed. Not only just with these additions of extra spawn points, but also in just helping you get back into the action a little further. Especially, again, on that 10v10, 20v20, and 32v32. One of the biggest takeaways that I took from 20v20 out of the reveal build was that I didn't like it as much because we were playing 5 flag domination, and if you were on that team that only had 1 flag, you were stuck in 1 to 2 spawns within that flag's general vicinity, meaning that you were spawn killed for the entirety that your team had that flag, or until somehow miraculously your team pushed out, or maybe somebody invaded a little too far into the spawn, which seemed to be literally on top of the spawn points where you'd flip out. Additionally, I also think the logic needs a hard reworking or adjustment. There's always questionable spawns, but this clip right here, that should never happen. I don't care who you are, whether you're being killed in that position or if you're the one getting the kill, I'd feel cheap getting that. I've also spawned with enemies once or twice, even on top of them, where we shared the exact same spawn point at the same second. That just shouldn't be happening. Truthfully, I am no game engineer. I am no spawn logic engineer. I have no idea how to remedy this, but it is something that I feel like it comes down to the logic itself. Players seemingly can be aiming down sight at specific spawn points, whereas previously in other games, that would completely nullify the even possibility of that spawn in other Call of Duty titles. Also, I think the respawn delay has something to do with it as well. It ends up having that slight respawn delay where you fly back into the map after you end up dying, so that's about 2 to 3 seconds of map flow that is lost with a likely predetermined spawn, allowing for 2 to 3 seconds less to flow out of that spawn. So maybe that logic sees it as, okay, this point is open, there is somebody coming towards it, but you should have enough time to get ready for a gunfight or to move into a situation where you're not even going to engage them. But with that 2 to 3 seconds where it takes to overview the entire map and then fly in, that is time that that player can move towards that predetermined spawn point. I have no idea if that's exactly the case. Maybe it ends up picking a spawn after reviewing that flyover, to which I would really hope not, because you can sometimes see people running towards your spawn point, but that might be something to take into consideration as well. I don't understand why we have that massive respawn delay of 2 to 3 seconds as is. I'd like to just jump right back into the action, but I am curious to see if that is something that, if adjusted, it would make spawns work out a little bit better. I don't know, but spawns were definitely one of the big things here that definitely frustrated me to all ends of the earth this weekend. One thing that is really just a quick passing mention, but definitely was one that, especially with the upped level cap, was one that I, and probably you noticed as well, was the absolute crutch perk of Ghost. Now, Ghost is something we deal with every single year, and that's totally fine, but the difference this year with Ghost in the beta compared to recent years is that you can be completely immobile and still be hidden with Ghost. So that means that you can be sitting in a corner for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, and you won't show up on the minimap or the radar when somebody has a UAV or even an advanced UAV, which isn't in the game at the moment. In recent titles, the effects of Ghost have been reserved for players only moving, and I think that that's something that it should be like that. It encourages movement, even though, while of course you might get snuck up on, you know the player is not just sitting there in the corner. It's just another piece that adds to the puzzle that already seems to play into a camp-happy nature of the game that we have at the very core. To me, that's an easy fix. Again, just make it so you're not covered by Ghost if you're not moving. That's just me. Additionally, some other things that I struggled with a little bit and I think could use some fixing up was some of the dark corners in the light differences, plus also seeing player models and the names. Now, granted, you can change some of the brightness settings and all, but it's not going to, at the very core, change a lot of the issues. There's some serious literal night and day scenarios where you go into, say, a cave and there's a massive shadow where you can't see anybody because you still have that global lighting of outside transitioning inside where you're walking in. So they have the sincere jump on you. Hopefully that's something that, while of course that will always be a case if you're going for realism, that just creates some situations where it may abundantly present camping. Additionally, some of the camera angles I just thought were really weird. I could have sworn I was around walls, and when watching back kill cams, which yes, are never truly 100% accurate, and they just try and piece together some of the netcode data for each of the kills and how they happened in perspectives, but watching back some of them, there were such a major difference. I don't know if I can find it just because I recorded so many things, but there was a situation where we were playing Cyber Attack and I genuinely did not see a player on my screen despite them killing me and on their screen being completely in the open. So some of that stuff I think definitely could be worked on. There's some frame stuttering things that also just got annoying. They didn't really get me killed too many times. There were some situations where it got stuck almost like that lag, and I did die once or twice, but nothing that really killed me off a streak that I would have been just livid with. That kind of stuff will, of course, be fixed out, and some of this stuff has already been mentioned. The frame stuttering and the spawns have been mentioned by Infinity Ward as things that are being looked into, and so maybe we can expect fixes coming as of this weekend, too. There are some other things, though, that I just genuinely don't know how I'd fix because they're just inherent issues. Some of the things being like angles and just map design overall. There's a lot of locations on maps where there is no exaggeration, a dozen or more different windows or points of entry that players have to be conscious of, that any number of those could have somebody posted up in a mounted head glitch or something like that. That stuff just penalizes movement. And overall, camping is something that is an issue that I think persists here at this, that I don't know how you fix this. I don't know if it comes back to that situation of maybe there's skill-based matchmaking, and so these players were just posted up on head glitches, mounted, looking into our spawn because they knew how to run a trap, or if that's genuinely how the masses will play once the game fully is, of course, on the beta for all players, and then the full launch of the game. I just feel like there's too much encouragement to not move. And additionally, one thing that I was kind of bothered by when looking at some of the statistics that my good friend JGod broke down was the TTK of some weapons. One in particular, the M4, which I'm sure probably melted for or against you during the beta if you played it at all here with this one. The TTK of that, or time to kill with that with headshots, is 73 milliseconds, meaning that if I understood the information we discussed properly, you can die technically 3 times before you get your weapon up. And I know headshots in any game are obviously the multiplier to go for, and being that we're going for realism here with Modern Warfare, you don't want to sacrifice too much of that, but that's absurdly fast. You don't have a chance in a lot of those engagements. So with somebody that may again be just posted up, mounted with that, and you're trying to turn the corner, you don't have a chance there. But again, I don't know how to change that, which is unfortunate. I don't have any feedback to offer because you can't just remove that multiplier for the headshots. You can't just change the entire design intent, but it's just wild that it's that fast. But anyways, I think that's kind of where we're at here at this one, and I didn't mean to let this slip away for so long and to discuss this so much, but that's my honest and critical review here of the first weekend of the beta. I know there's going to be changes going into weekend 2. I know there's going to be changes coming out of the beta into the full launch, but I wanted to share my thoughts and feedback here with you guys. What do you think here of this? Have you guys played weekend 1 or on the Xbox One and PC side, kind of just looking at it from the outside, seeing everything go down as it happens? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, but hopefully enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare. All things relating to the game we're going to be covering here on the channel over the next couple of weeks, and of course, as we ramp up towards launch. So hit that subscribe button if you guys don't want to miss a single thing, and if you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. I live on both those, so if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But let's sign out of the way. Thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.